I'm Davy. I'm awesome. And welcome to Davy's Awesome Wrestling, where I review wrestling-related things, all from the perspective of a fan, not an insider. And this week, it's time for a belt battle. Those of you who have been watching know I am a belt mark. I love wrestling championship belts. And in the past, I've pitted one company's championship belts versus another. Now, this isn't about which ones are more prestigious, who held which belts. It's all about the design of the belts themselves. Haven't done one of these in a while, but I was thinking this week, you know what? A lot of people compare AEW to WCW. Let's compare the championships. Let me get into a little bit of criteria, though. So in the past, if they had more than one entrant into the category, I just did all of them. I'm only doing one-on-one. Taking the one that is my favorite in that category and pitting it against the other one. For example, in the tag team division, WCW had a few tag team titles. I'm taking the one I think is the best, and I'm pitting it against the AEW tag team championships. So therefore, if you're like, well, what if you pitted this one against this one? I'm pitting my favorites against the favorites. So, let's get into the belt battle. The first category I usually do is uncategorizable. This usually is a championship that is a part of a division, or just something that other companies don't have, so I can't really pit it against each other. In the uncategorizable for AEW, it's the AEW TBS Championship. In the past, for AEW's uncategorizable, I usually put the FTW, but this time I had two. I can't really categorize the AEW TBS Championship. It is a women's Midcard Championship. And to my knowledge, I've looked around and I can't find any other place that has ever done that. It was very innovative on the side of AEW. You could kind of say WCW did that because they had that WCW Women's Cruiserweight Championship, but that didn't make any sense because almost every woman is technically a cruiserweight, so I couldn't really put that against each other. It didn't make sense. In fact, some of you are even right now scratching your heads like, I don't remember the Women's Cruiserweight Championship or a Women's Championship at all. They did have both, and it's not surprising you don't remember them because they really didn't showcase them very well at all. But I decided to put the AEW TBS Championship in this category because, number one, I actually like this belt a lot more than the FTW Championship, and it is at least an officially recognized title of AEW. And it is going against the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. Again, AEW has no weight division. Weight divisions in American companies have kind of become a thing of the past, thanks to WWE getting rid of their Cruiserweight Championship, which they just didn't know how to showcase. But I always did love that Cruiserweight Championship. To this day, it's still one of my favorite designs of a belt. So in this case, with the TBS Championship, it is a very nice design. I don't like it as much as the TNT Championship, simply based on two things. Number one, the color has a baby blue banner instead of a red banner. And personally, I'm just not big on baby blue. If it was a darker blue, like royal blue or something, might like it when the TNT Championship. But the other thing that bothers me is the logo, the TBS logo in the front. It's kind of small, which means there's a whole lot on that main plate where nothing's going on there. The TNT Championship has the TNT logo, which is actually bigger and covers more of the belt, so it's not too busy, but it's not like there's nothing going on there. The Cruiserweight Championship, in my opinion, is just such a great-looking championship. Even though the side plates really don't correlate with the main plate, it actually clashes in a way that works. And like I said, I've always just loved this design. So in the first category, uncategorizable, it's going to have to go to the WCW Cruiserweight Championship, making it in the first round WCW 1, AEW 0. In the next category, one I really couldn't do until recently, the six-man category. AEW right now has the AEW Trios Championships. Some people might argue here like you shouldn't call it six-man because one's Trios and the other's six-man. It's the same freaking thing. I know the rules in a Trios match are a different thing, but the title itself, it's 3 belts for a 3-person team. The belt overall, can't deny I do love this Trios Championship. It is a beautiful title. I love the design on the front plate. I love that it's mostly just the black and gold contrasting, but has the blue globe in it. The only problem I have with this is when you're seeing it on TV, it's actually kind of hard to see the part that says Trios. But other than that, it's a beautiful championship. And that versus the WCW six-man tag team championship they had for a small time. Truth is about this, I didn't really like either of the designs that they had for the six-man tag team championship. This, to me, was just the better of the two. Some people would argue that the other design was better, but either way, there was no chance that this was going to win over the Trios Championships. AEW wins this category. Tying it, AEW won, WCW won. The tag team division, the AEW Tag Team Championships, which I've gone on record before to talk about. I love these championships. They're not my favorite tag team titles ever, and I don't think they're the best looking thing in the world. They're still very beautiful titles. I like that the shape of them is sort of a throwback to the old Reggie Parks Intercontinental Championship, which I was always a big fan of that championship, but it's still very much its own. I do love it, and I talked about it before. I love that it has that white snakeskin backing. It just adds something to the title. And honestly, I don't think these titles look bad on anybody who's held them. Versus the WCW Tag Team Championships. Again, they had a couple of them, and I did like both of them, but this one, the one I call the post-NWO Tag Team Championships, versus the ones that were there before the NWO, I just like them better. The other ones were a little too small, especially when somebody like Kevin Nash held them. He'd wear it around his waist, and it kind of looked like he was just wearing a Texas belt buckle. These ones, to me, were more like, this is a championship we take seriously. Had the bigger plate, the side plates that worked with it. I did actually like this one. I didn't love it, but I liked it. It was a nice-looking championship. However, I like the AEW ones a little bit better. So in the tag team category, it's going to have to go to AEW. AEW 2, WCW 1. In this next category, some fans are going to be upset by this. But the truth is, well, AEW has 2 mid-card championships, and so did WCW. So it made me wonder, do I pick the best of the mid-card? But then I was thinking about it, and in actuality, both companies, whereas yes, they had 2 mid-card titles, they did have a mid-card title that was a little bit more elevated than the other one. This has nothing to do with what I think as far as whether or not they're a big deal. There is one mid-card that seems to just be a little bit higher up than the other one. So we're going to have categories of upper mid-card and lower mid-card. It's not to say these titles aren't a big deal, they're just not as big a deal. In AEW, we have the All-Atlantic Championship. Not just because it's newer, but let's just face it, is not being elevated as much as the TNT Championship. Mainly because they're not even admitting the TNT Championship is a mid-card. But this one they are admitting. It's a mid-card title. And again, it's a big deal to hold it. At the moment I was filming, we've only had one champion, but it is a big deal. People want it, and it's elevating him. But it would be a bigger deal if he was the TNT champion. Which I do think is a little funny, because if I wasn't somebody watching AEW, I just watched for the first time, I would assume that this one would be a bigger deal than TNT, because this makes you the champion of every country the Atlantic Ocean touches, whereas the TNT is the championship of the network. However, belt design itself, absolutely love it. This title is so attractive. I love how it's kind of a throwback to the Mid-South North American Championship, but looks much better and is very much distinctly its own. It also kind of resembles the current version of the AEW Women's Championship, but again, still very much its own. And this one is going against the WCW Television Championship. Now again, some people are going to get mad. They're going to be like, I liked the TV title more than the US title. Okay, but it wasn't placed on the same pedestal as the US Championship. The US Championship in WCW was almost like saying, you're on your way to being the world champion. The TV title was, you're a big deal, but it wasn't as big a deal. Which again, I thought was kind of funny, because if I had never watched WCW, I was just tuning in that day, I would assume this one was higher up, because you're the champion of television, which is all over the world, versus this guy is the champion of just the United States. But it was what it was. This championship, though, is, again, a very beautiful championship. I absolutely loved the WCW Television Championship. It's one that is on my list of belts I have to get a replica of. As much as I love the All-Atlantic Championship, I gotta give the lower mid-card category to WCW's Television Championship. Making it again a tie. AEW 2, WCW 2. Which brings us to the next category, the upper mid-card championship. For AEW, it's the AEW TNT Championship. Been a fan of this title since it came out. It's just become available for pre-order. Wish I had the money, I would get it right now. The title is absolutely beautiful. The edge I gave to it versus the TBS Championship is, again, the coloring. I like red better than baby blue. And the logo on the front takes up a little bit more space, so there's a little bit more going on, rather than just being so much space with nothing happening. Believe it or not, both of those things can either work or hurt a championship. In this case, I think it just helps. Versus the WCW United States Championship. Again, one that has always been in my list of favorites. I absolutely love the championship. I like the Jamar version a little bit more than the Reggie Parks version, just because I thought it looked better with the plate being slightly bigger. and only having one plate on each side versus 2 plates on each side, it gave more to the main plate. Most of the time I prefer a 5-plate belt versus a 3-plate belt, but in this case it looked better as a 3-plate belt. Reggie Parks originally came up with the concept of this, and I like how he made it similar to his Intercontinental Championship, but still very distinctly its own. Another thing I love about this United States Championship that I think makes it the best United States Championship, most United States Championships way overdo it with either the flag or the eagle, or just whatever insignia of United States they have. For example, NWA, they have the United States Tag Team Championships right now, which are ugly as sin, and basically just have a big flag on the front. They also have the National Championship, which, let's face it, means United States, where the plate looks like the United States of America. It's ugly. Not to mention WWE. For the longest time, they had their first version of the United States Championship, which I always hated from the moment it came out, with the big flag on the front. It was too much. Now they've got one where it's a little toned down. It looks better. I don't hate that championship, but I don't love it either. And again, I think they overdo it with both the eagle and the flag. The WCW United States Championship, on the other hand, it has the eagle that covers most of the plate, but doesn't take up all of it, still leaves plenty of space for other things to happen. And the flag is small and above, so it definitely represents the United States, but doesn't overdo it with the flag, and I love it for that. I think a lot of places could stand to learn from that. You don't need to overdo it, and it doesn't. This belt does it perfectly. Gonna have to give this one to WCW as well, making it AEW 2, WCW 3. In the women's category, the AEW Women's World Championship, which I have said again, is the first time a women's championship is in my favorite of all time. I absolutely love this championship. When I do update my top 11 of all time, it will be in that list. I remember when I first saw it, someone had told me, by the way, tonight they introduced another version of the Women's Championship. I was like, why? They've already had 2. First one was terrible. The second one was better. It went from being a 7-plate belt to a 5-plate belt, which was better, and the front plate was flatter and a little bit bigger, making it look a lot nicer. But I would never have said it was one of my favorites. When I saw this, I said, I don't care that this is their 3rd version of their championship. It is absolutely stunning. It's very similar to the All-Atlantic Championship. This doesn't have nearly as much color, with no flags, no blue globe in the back. But for some reason, that works to me. With the darker shade of gold and the black, it just pops so very well. If they sold this right now, I'd be in a hurry to buy it. Which is the only women's championship I would ever be in a hurry to buy. There have been some in the past that were okay looking. I like that they're taking them more seriously now. But most of the time, women's championships were just something that looked like they threw together at the last minute to give the women something. This one looks like they painstakingly took some time to develop a gorgeous women's championship, and they did. And this versus the WCW Women's Championship that they had for a little bit more than a year. Only had 2 different title holders, and most people don't even remember it exists. And there's a reason for that. There wasn't a whole lot of championship matches on television. In fact, this WCW championship was actually defended more in New Japan Pro Wrestling than it ever was on WCW television, which still wasn't a lot. Which is probably why the only 2 championship holders it ever had were New Japan wrestlers. I mean, ultimately, it's got the crown on there, which I get. It's like saying she's the queen of WCW, but again, it didn't work. And then the side plates going with the crown thing, it was way too bulky. It didn't look good on either of the 2 women who held it. It was just an all-around terrible championship that they terribly promoted, which is, again, why most people don't even remember it ever existed. This one was a no-brainer that AEW wins. Retying it. AEW 3, WCW 3. So then the tiebreaker. The AEW World Heavyweight Championship. Big Platinum. A title I love very, very much. When this became available to buy, I was doing whatever I could to buy it as soon as I could. And I will say this, it's not only the best quality replica I've ever had, it's the best one I've ever seen. But as far as the belt itself, absolutely gorgeous, stunning. I love this freaking title. It shot up way high the moment I saw it to being almost my favorite of all time. Such a gorgeous belt. Versus WCW's big gold belt. I always did like the title. I didn't like it as much as the one in WWF at the time, but I always liked it. My problem with it that I have talked about before, the plate was completely flat. Therefore, it didn't look very good on some guys. I liked it better when WWE came out with their own version where the plate was a little bit curved and therefore more form-fitting and looked good on pretty much everybody who held it. Not to mention, I will say one thing that hurt my memory of this belt is they didn't take very good care of it. Like, if you remember towards the end, it had that one side plate that was broken and always sticking out. It definitely needed to be polished a little bit after they took the NWO spray paint off of it. But thinking about it in its original form, when it was brand new and beautiful, versus the AEW Championship, gotta give it to Big Platinum versus Big Gold. Some of you may be angry about this, but those of you who've been watching for a long time, you know I've talked about it. The AEW Championship is number 2 on my favorites of all time. Therefore, winning this belt battle is AEW with 4 versus WCW's 3. So there you have it. That's my wrestling review this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you get notifications when I post my videos, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think of my rankings. Tell me if you agree or disagree. And tell me why you agree or disagree. Love you guys.